All right, if you haven't done so already, let me know where you're from. Uh, and feel free. I always say this is a great time to be social, right? Kind of building community. Yes, you'll have access to the recording. Uh, Let us know where you're from again. And what else to know? Yeah, I have my links here, my YouTube channel, my newsletter. Feel free to put your, LinkedIn information as well. Uh, get to know one another. Thank you so much for joining. Buckle up. It's going to be fast and furious session here. Again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Really appreciate that you are here. Let's get to it. Let me. So I'm Rob Franklin, 20 years in Silicon Valley. Passion for data since the, early, actually late 90s. And data science really kind of became involved with that in 2017, managing 8 data science teams at BNY Mellon. I founded Silicon Valley Project AI. It's a meetup group. We're having our next meetup October 9th in Palo Alto, California. So if you're in California, come join us. It's at JPMC. Really excited about that. And you can find that information on my LinkedIn page. Was the executive director of PMO for a startup called WePay that was acquired by JP Morgan Chase. That's how I was able to get JPMC to host our next event. I write a newsletter, AI Quick Bites. I don't know how many of you have read that, but hopefully um, some of you have. And I am the founder of Journey to Agility, which is a strategic consultancy helping implement AI and helping companies scale and keep their secret sauce. They're both kind of the same thing. All right, man, let's get into it. So, what I like to say is transforming an org is hard, right? And that's like a lot what was happening, in the last 25 years with Agile, all these, digital transformations, Agile transformations. And now we have like implementing AI in the org. And that's even harder, right? And doing both, right? Impossible. But that's why you're here. You're here to learn about sort of how you go about kind of transforming an org or implementing AI in the organization. So, what I like to say is, when we're talking about transformations, right? Those were difficult. And I think, implementing AI is really doing that on steroids because it's not only the technology which is challenging, but really for companies, enterprises that are truly going to succeed, what they need to do is you're building it from the culture up, right? It's about retraining your organization. It's about building the cultural mindset of leveraging AI and implementing AI. It's about addressing the fear of AI. So there's a lot of education and there's a lot of collaboration that's required, right? Because you really now need sort of technology to work with your subject matter experts who understand the data, who understand what the best answers when you're building your model are. And that's a really, companies tend to be very siloed, right? And now what we're asking them is to kind of come together, one team, one dream. We'll talk more about that. Um, Journey to Agility is really my story and the difference about agility and agile, and what we want to help you kind of build is the playbook to interact, to basically implement AI. So I think, how many people here are concerned with being replaced by AI? Maybe put a, thumbs up uh, in the chat. Would love to hear from you a little. Well, what I know is, certainly there's a lot of fear about being replaced by AI. And what I would say here that if you're here, the good news is what's old is new again. And what I mean by that is to truly be successful with implementing AI. How many people have heard about, and this has been around for a long time, people, process, and technology? Maybe raise up, give me a thumb. Someone give me a thumb. Thumb in the chat. You are here. You're not all AI robots kind of listening in. Is there anyone? Bueller? Hey. All right. I'm going to say this is a less interactive crew, but we'll continue to prod you to kind of be interactive. So you will not be replaced by AI. However, that's the good news. What you might be replaced by is someone who's leveraging AI, right? And working with AI. What I like to say is AI is a tool. A hammer doesn't replace a carpenter. AI will not replace you. Of course, will people lose their jobs? Absolutely. I'm not saying that AI won't replace jobs, but there, what I've learned in my career is that there tends to be a lot of hype around these big changes. So when the PC came in, people were going to lose their jobs. We were going to go to 4-day work weeks. It was going to have a dramatic impact. And did people lose their jobs? Sure. They're no longer typing pools anymore, right? Typists lost their jobs. um the story that I really like to share a lot, because these revolutionary changes have happened consistently throughout time. If you go back to the early 20s when mechanized farming really came into play, or the early 20th century, there was great fear about the industrialization of farming because most of our society, most of the people worked on a farm. Uh, so we adjusted as a country. We started building out better educational systems, high schools, so people who were no longer working on the farm had a place to go to be educated and build another career. So there's always fear of change. And that's something as leaders that you have to understand is taking place in your company, right? There are going to be people who are like, I know this is good, but like, I'm okay over here. And you have to kind of address that. How? Education, right? Leading with education, leading by example and showing people, maybe writing when you write an email to your organization, you share out, hey, I wrote this with AI. You give the right training and tools and show them so they know how to leverage AI. And we'll talk more about building products coming right up. But you really have to drink the champagne and share and create that culture that you are an AI first culture. All right. So I really found this fascinating, and we'll jump into more examples. But what I found very fascinating was, what year do you think Alvin made this prediction? Anyone want to take a guess? Oh, I got a thumbs up. Thank you, James. Really appreciate it. Anyone want to take a guess when sort of Alvin made this prediction?
1970.
Holy moly, who is that? You are 100% correct. if I had a prize to give you, I'd give it to you right now. Yes, it was 1970. And what I like to say was, I thought I was so smart because I was thinking about these things, and then I saw this, and, I read like an article and that he was thinking about this 50 years ago before even the PC had been introduced. So you're here, right? And I think the key to being successful as a leader or successful in AI is that you have to continually learn and unlearn and relearn. Information's moving so fast, right? And Alvin talks about something called future shock, and that it's a certain psychological state that individuals and entire societies have when too much change in too short a period of time. And we're going to face this. I guarantee you, whether consciously or unconsciously, there will be a pushback against AI, right? There's going to be fear because it's just moving so fast. How do you have to best sort of prepare your organization for this change that's coming up. And that's what I've been talking about, education, right? Giving the tools, giving empowerment to your teams to experiment. So I think you're in a good spot, and the ability, particularly I think for older people, to kind of like myself, to continually learn and press yourself to like double down on learning is challenging and difficult. But if you're going to stay competitive, that's what's truly needed. So, what I like to say is AI first, it needs to be built into your DNA, right? And this is not a one and done deal. It does require complete transformation of your entire organization. And the challenge with AI, right, ironically enough, in my opinion, is not about the tech. It's about your culture, right? And again, the change is happening so quick, and the fear and lack of training and support, and transforming your company for AI success. It's critical in this rapidly sort of evolving business landscape to really build that AI into your company's DNA. It's like no longer optional. It's imperative. The transformation goes beyond just technology adoption. It requires a whole holistic approach that touches every aspect of your corporation. And that's kind of tying in like these transformations, right, that we've been talking about for the last, 30 years, for technology transformations. We have transformed technologically, but the culture, right? And I'll very quickly, the one thing I remember, from my sociology 101, it takes time for a culture to change. You, as a leader, can't just say, I want you to go from 5 years old to the end of the quarter 10 years old. You can't mandate cultural change. And that's why it takes time. And that's why you got to start implementing now and building your AI muscles. So, key takeaways: cultural shift, overcoming the fear of AI through education and encouragement is essential. Governance and risk management, we're going to talk about that. You're going to have like there are two ways, in my opinion, that I've seen governance and risk management go down, particularly in bigger corporations. You bolt it on at the end. So right before you go live, you start having these conversations, and they become more battles, right? Because your legal, your audit teams, your governance structures are going to demand things that at the end are very expensive to do, right? What you want to do is build it from the ground up in the beginning, what I say, kill two birds with one stone. As you're building your new product, create the governance structure, right? Invite sort of your risk, your legal teams to be part of your teams. And this is why it's, again, so important to have one team, the entire corporation working with you, right? And that way you can be building it and it's adding value to your customer if you do it up front. If you wait to the end, you're liable to be disrupted and you may not be able to do it in that way that you thought. And then you have to kind of take a hit to your schedule. And adaptive leadership, let's just talk quickly about that. Leadership, a lot of leadership do not understand AI, right? AI is a very different life cycle than your typical software development life cycle, right? Software development, very simply put, you do A plus B, you get C, right? You know A, B equals C. AI is kind of different. You do A, B, and 98% of the time you get C, and maybe 2% of the time you get D. The more you want to mitigate risk, the more expensive it is right now to ensure sort of, mitigate risk at 100% for most companies is untenable because it's too expensive to do or can't be done. So embracing these essential steps are key to sort of building your DNA from the ground up. Sorry. So old school. We're going to go a little bit of old school and then hit into new school. Uh, so how have we been approaching AI? And what I would say, we've been approaching AI with a tech mindset, right? So it's very much sort of, this model is from Microsoft. It's an older sort of data science life cycle. But do any people see anything that's missing in this diagram? Anyone want to take a guess what's missing? It's a great diagram. I used to think this was the cat's meow. I'm not that old because cat's meow's got to be from the 20s or something. What is missing? It's kind of been what I've been talking about. It's culture, it's collaboration, it's governance. Those are key things that are missing here. So now I think this is, better, right? And I like what I think here is like when I'm going to show you certain things, some slides that are coming up, you're going to go, holy moly, Rob, that's a lot of process. And, we haven't even started yet. So how are we going to, jump in to do all this? And what I would say is, at the start, you just want to show that you can kind of build an interesting prototype that has, a potential big impact. And here, like, if you're working right now, just like give me your attention. I'm gonna, this is like if you take away one thing from this, sort of workshop, putting a prototype in production is easy. Anyone can do that, right? You can do that, if your organization sets its mind, there's no reason why you can't get a prototype in production for 3 months. You can't put a prototype in production in 3 months. But here's the deal. Uh, you're not going to be able to scale that. You're not going to be able to maintain that, right? One model is easy. What I would say is 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, right? And everything's getting multiple times complex. So the complexity is also increasing. So a prototype's a great way to start to show the value. But if you truly want to scale, right, you got to go new school, baby. right? So, oh, if you can mute, that would be great. Although I like to hear people laugh. So let's talk about some of the adoption barriers. Um, is there anything that people think is missing? You could put it into the chat. You could even yell it out. So what I like to say is change, even when it's good for an organization, often raises up numerous barriers. You as a leader have to be prepared to answer this. And eventually you need to have your plan to address these. So let's quickly go over some of these, right? So security, right? There's obviously a lot of potential security and engineering or computing capacity. Absolutely, right? So one of the things that you would want to understand, like from a procurement sort of possible, area, I'll jump to that. Thank you, James, is, particularly if you're a bigger company and you're going to host your own CPU, is as you start scaling up, you got to price that in. And it can get very expensive very quickly. Whether you have your own physical data center or you're hosting, your AI via like Amazon or you're leveraging OpenAI, it can get very expensive very quickly. So computing and energy is actually, there are two key things. And I'm going to go off on a tangent. One thing is what I would say is there are creators and consumers. This is how I look at it, right? The creators are, OpenAI, Microsoft, Anthropic. They're creating the big models. They are spending hundreds of millions of dollars. They are concerned significantly about data centers and compute. But as consumers, right, you're more concerned. And if you can mute, please, that'd be very much appreciated. Let me see if I can find you. Uh, Thank you. Oh, can you mute, please? Thank you. Give me 1 second. All right. I'm gonna mute you. Okay, thank you. Um, so they're creators and they're consumers. Creators are the big boys, consumers are the organizations that are consuming these big models, right? So both can potentially have to significantly think of compute. Thinking of energy, I would say, would be more of the creators because you have to, think about the energy to your data centers. But security, right? There's a whole new world of security risks that are opened up once you start leveraging AI, right? And that has to do from responsible AI and ethical, making sure you're, building models that are responsible and ethical. That has to do with different ways to inject into prompts and uh, my mind's blanking on the word is that, when you're injecting, you are overtaking the prompt, right? And making it do things that it wasn't necessarily designed to do. It's getting access to sort of personal data. It's including personal data. So there's a lot to think about from security that's never had to be thought of. There aren't that many people who have the expertise in these areas. Governance, we've talked about this and we'll go over a great slide, but you as a bigger organization have to come up with, a governance strategy to ensure, right, that AI is built into your DNA and empower your teams to be best of breed. Talked a lot about culture and collaboration, right? Fear of just decreased skills, right? From, different coding co-pilots and showing the value that AI can bring to your engineers. Lack of culture in sharing and silos. AI magnifies the need. A quick story: when I worked at one of the companies I worked at, was just getting the data from a different organization could take months, right? And people don't necessarily plan that time in, that it'll take that long to get different data. Or you may not even be capturing the data yet, right? So now you got to go to another organization, ask them to update their front end to capture some new data. That takes months. Maybe that org, is planned out for 3 months or 6 months. Now you got to get on their sort of priority list, and it's not a priority for them, it's a priority for you. So getting access to data, quality data, lack of company code guidelines. How do we use this? How many people have, like, what I say is, like, in certain organizations, AI is a dirty little secret, right? Everyone's using it, but no one admits it. That's not a great sort of organic AI first company. Everyone should know that you're using AI. You should be shouting about it. You should be investigating new tools. You should be open to new ideas. Procurement challenges, changes to sales cycles, uh, friction, right, in the sales cycle, different. What standards do you follow? There are a lot of them, a lot of good ones, right? I just published last week and this week on responsible AI. They're like 10. Everyone has a responsible AI principles. So which ones do you follow? Quick thing, what I would say is, you got to create them for yourself. You leverage sort of best practices, like Microsoft has them, IBM has principles for responsible AI, but it's important that you create them yourself. And more importantly, that you share and educate your people on what your AI principles are, and they're bought in. Understanding of your leadership team. Things are moving so quickly. I'm involved in this every day, reading, writing, researching, and it moves too fast for me. So now you're, an executive leader in the C-suite or a senior leader. You have to educate them on AI, right? And so it's important they understand. It's important they understand it's non-deterministic. So, like I said, A plus B doesn't always equal C, right? And that, you're mining for gold. Leaders are struggling to keep up. We have to educate them. And then there's just legal barriers, right? There are so many court cases and new potential regulations. Knowing what to pay attention to, what not to pay attention to. Example, Peloton was. Oh, hello. If you can mute again. I don't. Let me see if I can find you. Can you? Let me see. Can you unmute? Can you mute, please? Can you? Can you mute, please? Can you mute, please? Let me see. I'm trying to find them. Okay, I think I got it. Thank you. I'm not. That's the most interruptions I've had. That's interesting. Okay, so back to it. A lot of legal barriers. You have to work with your legal team, right? It's really important. And then there's intellectual property, right? That you have to kind of understand. What can you do? Uh, what data can you use? Peloton was just sued for using a third party chatbot, and that third party was sort of misusing the data. So you have to understand all that. All right, so those are barriers. So I'm going to just quickly go through this. So, the last 25 years have been a lot about tech and agile, right? And it's been very like agile, and I think where it's missed in a big part is that it focused too much on the technology and not enough on sort of creating sort of agility, right? And agility between bringing the tech and the business together, people, process, and technology. You have to transform your culture. That's the key, right? And in order to do that, you have to kind of address all the things I've been talking about and build AI into your DNA. And that will lead to agility. And to me, right, you ask 10 people what agile is, they're going to give you 10 different answers. Uh, Perhaps the same thing with agility. But for me, when I talk about agility, it's the ability to have objective information to sort of make quick decisions in very short periods of time. So quick, educated decisions, right, with your tech and your business, not just tech, not just business, but again, one team, one dream. And then here's the maturity model. So I think I talked about in my ads for this, the AI maturity model. And this is a Gartner maturity model. What I've done here is I've added these here. So, when you talk about sort of your 5 levels to transformation, most organizations are going to go like this: early interest with a risk of overhyping, right? And that's where you got to get your culture on board, right? You could have people interested, but if you don't get people excited and starting to adopt, you're never going to get to the experimental, right? And once you kind of get that approval, right, you're going to get people concerned about reputational risks. So you have to start having, thinking about governance. You have to start thinking about sort of, how you're going to mitigate risk. You have to start training people, right? Particularly your leadership teams in the beginning, and then more of your wider organization. And then as you get in, you have your first prototype in production. Now, once everyone's on board, you really got to start thinking about, okay, governance, regulations, ethics probably earlier. That's more in the reputational. And you're building this flywheel so that you can introduce new models. You can keep track of new models. Once a model goes into production, I think a lot of people forget there's model drift. You have to constantly be monitoring your model. You have to be refreshing your model. So there's a lot of
Ben toplantıda iniyorum.
uh, post-operational work that needs to be done. And then if you get to this point, you're now sort of like AI is part of your, kind of process. You've built it in, you've transformed. Um, you are now getting to AI as part of your business DNA. What I would say is, particularly in the next 5 years, perhaps only 5 or 10% are going to get to AI is built into your DNA. And I would say companies that are starting now have a better chance because culture, if you go back to what I shared before, takes a long time to change
Bal
and to
limon.
truly build that
Biraz
into
iç, biraz iç
your
boğazını temizlesin.
DNA. If you can mute, that would be much appreciated. Let me see if I can find you quickly again. All right. Thank you. Okay, I think I got him. All right. So know that that's a journey and that's certainly a goal. All right. So here's a nice little eye chart. You could kind of, not an eye chart, but you could take, feel free, obviously, to take screenshots of this. But I would say this is a very simple sort of, soup to nuts, kind of overview you can show to an executive, right? Of here's my high level process. Obviously, we're going to show you another slide that has a lot more detail. But again, if you're working, if you're doing stuff, if you want to truly learn and you're here to learn, here's another takeaway. You got to determine ROI quickly. You got, as a culture, have to come up with a way to determine when you're scoping. And this is the thing that I've seen, and this is what's old is new again. Companies, particularly engineering, have a very difficult time sort of estimating or predicting how big something is, right? And you have to build that into your DNA. Why? Does anyone want to take a guess why? You want to be able to determine an ROI in the scoping phase rather than waiting further down the line?
You
You
have
could
to
put,
sell it, right?
you have to sell it. Yeah. Yeah, you want to show your ROI?
Yeah, you're going to have to keep selling your product to more and more people, to the employees, to maybe a board, maybe investors.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, those are cost benefit analysis. But the thing that I say is this this work here is very resource intensive, right? Takes a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of effort. If the RO, you want to pick the cream of the crop, particularly in the beginning, the low hanging fruit, the least effort, the most return on investment, right? And if you could sort of narrow that down here, this is where you're going to spend a lot of time, right? So if you can get good at determining, and again, and I think that where teams struggle is they want to be exact. I'm not saying about being exact here. I'm saying this is an order of magnitude, right? And if you're good at it, you will, you could be 20% off, but, there'll be something that will, just jump off the page. That's what you want to focus on, particularly early, right? For your prototypes, because this takes a lot of time, and and time is money, right? So take that away. Here's another thing. Why do we think this is so important? Why is it important to have a vision and a strategy? And why am I showing you that on an AI workshop? If you've been
Uh,
reading my newsletter, you would have a little hint. What I like
Because,
to, oh, go ahead. Does someone want to say something?
sorry, but I believe because things are will keep evolving, so we have to set the benchmark and then keep tracking where we started from and where we're heading at. And if there will be any deviation required in the middle way, we adjust the final target.
Ex Yeah, I mean that's spot on, right? Because like the more I read, right now, the more I've been in this, is you'll start with one idea and usually you end up somewhere, you know, either significantly different than where you originally ended up. But what I would say is there's a big difference between having an AI strategy and then having a plan to implement AI. So, big difference, AI strategy between a plan to implement it. And what I mean by that is AI is very broad, right? It's a new shiny thing. If you're not clear on your vision, on your strategy, you're really at risk of building the wrong thing, right? You want to implement AI, right, for the ROI, right? But more important, for the outcome to your customers. And it should map to your vision and strategy. And it should help to amplify your vision and strategy. If you don't understand, if your engineers, if your teams are not clear on what your vision or strategy are, they're going to come up with the wrong AI things to focus quarterly on their OKRs. And then they're going to do discovery. And I've seen this happen again and again, where an AI data science team actually delivers something very valuable. However, the challenge is it's not what the actual customer wanted. They go, that's great, but I'm not willing to fund it. So you got to understand what the vision, the strategy, and even more sort of granular is. And it's hard to believe, but I've seen this many times in big companies, not even understanding what the problem is you're trying to solve with AI, but just kind of going after a new shiny thing. So it's so important to sort of understand your product, to your strategy, to what you're trying to accomplish on a quarterly basis, to empowering your teams to do the discovery, right? And, discovery is very important in AI, right? Because there's a lot of investigation. What's the best model? What's the best algorithm? What's the best approach to solve the problem, right? So I'm going to start moving more quickly here. Okay, this is the money slide. If I was you, I'd screenshot this bad boy. I call it my house of AI, right? And if you want to lower cost, right? And we talked about hardware costs, software costs, training people skills, right? And you want to scale up. This is the framework, right? These are all the different areas that you need to be thinking about. Now, if you're looking at this and you're starting to go, holy moly, man, I want to just get shit done, and this is way too complex. I hear you, right? And that's why this is like a stake in the ground for things that you should be thinking about. Depending on where your company is on their maturity sort of journey, if you're a startup, you're probably not doing all these things, right? You're just trying to make payroll at the end of the month. But if you're sort of a Fortune 500 enterprise, yes, you have to be thinking about all of these. Now, can you do it all day one? No, that's what the prototype's for. You got to first get everyone on board. But think about these. I'm going to show you some governance in the next slide. But again, the foundation is culture and collaboration. That's where you're going to differentiate yourself. So a little bit about core governance and structures, right? Again, stake in the ground, right? Depending on how complex, how big your organization is, you have to have your C-suite sort of bought in and supporting AI, right? That's your sort of enterprise AI governance. Now, your C-suite, if you're a smaller company, right? A bigger company like Jamie Dimon's not coming to your local AI steering committee, right? So depending on the size of your company, you may cut out a step, right? But you'll want a steering committee, one that takes in that initial sort of intake and sort of reviews and helps to determine, okay, which are the core sort of projects are we going to do in AI that'll move the needle? You want to build a center of excellence that truly, helps to raise everyone up, because there's just not enough experts, right, in AI. That's the key, right? So what I've seen done really well is you have some really strong people, an AI like architect who truly understands and reviewing the work and helping to standardize the work and bringing people together, a lead data scientists helping to make everyone better. And then the teams are really leveraging, right, sort of, this sort of intake process. And then they're bringing their designing and reviewing at the project level. So you want to kind of play with this structure and implement the structure that best works for your organization. You don't have to do everything. Remember when I first started in AI as an agile scrum master, I did everything by the book, right? I was like, it has to be done this way. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is take this as a framework and you gotta listen to your culture and understand where they're at, right? And implement it in a way that will be successful for your organization. Okay, so two quick things. I just love this slide. I'm a big John Cutler fan. I stole this from him. He does a lot of writing and product, but you could look at this as the Big Bang, right? Takes forever, works small, iterating and like this tends to be more of a feature factory here, right? You're just delivering these little bits, but there's no, like when we were going and talking about having a mission and a vision, it's not really kind of tying back. Define big, you've kind of locked yourself into this big project, and then you've broken it up into, this, never ending burn down versus working small. And I think AI is great for working small. If you have a strategy and you have a mission, you're doing your discovery, right? And if you build a culture that it's okay to kill stuff, right? And you set parameters around when you kill stuff so you don't get involved in the never-ending march that delivers no value, right? So you're trying something, you're digging for that goal, you're reviewing it with your key stakeholders. Is it truly answering the problem that you stated? If not, you can either go back. But here's another tip for you, what I found. If you don't set some boundaries for your data science teams, they will dig for gold forever. Like they won't stop, right? You have to give them the guidance and the leadership of saying, all right, let's take X time. What's holding you back? Sometimes they don't get the data, right? And they never have an opportunity to kind of do the analysis. So you got to unblock them and ensure they have what they need to do the research. Sometimes they're doing the research and they're just not getting an answer. That's okay. But you don't like the anti-pattern is to keep digging where there's no goal. So last little thing here, not little. What I wanted to show by this is the complexity, right? The complexity of sort of what it takes to deliver use cases. And here's the key takeaway. And this is why I think AI is not going to replace us. This is only going to get more and more complicated. As we get into multi-agents and agents communicating with agents and models communicating with models, and it's going to take, I don't think anyone on this call, will be here in the point where AI is automatically running everything in engineering, right? It's just not going to happen, not in our lifetimes. It's too complex. And this just starts to show you some of that complexity, right? But it's even getting factors more complex. So you can be the leader in AI. That's the key, right? There's so much leadership that's needed strategically. So what did we learn today, right? Let's see. I think. All right. Implementing AI is hard, but with agility, it can be done. You're not going to be replaced. Learn, unlearn, relearn. AI first. You got to have it built into your DNA. Old school and new school. We talked about an AI maturity model. We kind of talked about the house of AI, core AI governance, top down, bottoms up. Think big, work small, AI complexities, right? So here's where I need your help. I'm not selling anything. We are going to get back. I have the top 10 for you. Top 10 AI reasons projects fail. But I'm going to ask you to quickly fill out a survey. I'm thinking of building an AI think tank community, a leadership accelerator, where we're creating a roadmap for your success. Oh, So who's this community for? Business leaders, executives seeking AI frameworks, best practices for your company, product managers who want to build AI products at scale, program project managers looking to level up your game, engineering leaders who are leading large programs and looking to build up your TPM skills. So what are some of the services? So a lean coffee, an opportunity to talk and ask questions with your peers, Q&A session with me and other AI leaders, cutting it AI strategic templates like the slides I'm sharing with you now. We have the free meetups in the Bay Area, a safe place to learn and grow, right? I think that's really important, right? And ask questions. Sometimes you may not feel safe in your own company. You'll have a community to come to. Discounts on courses, fee-based services like coaching, AI implementation, consulting, and then a lot of skills and techniques, like a much deeper dive than we did able to do today on individual topics. So like a deep dive on the house of AI and really talking you through that. Oops. So, one other thing, I work with CLPS, an engineering outsourcing company that we kind of provide intelligence as a service. So when we talk about a prototype, right? Here's how you do it quickly. Maybe when you don't have the experience in-house yet, right? We'll help you get there. We'll help you build that first prototype. We'll help you build out the company. We'll help you build out the staff. And what I like to say, it's a hybrid onshore offshore model. So you kind of get me onshore in Silicon Valley, working with our teams in India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Really exciting stuff where we go through what's your problem statement. We help you assess, we help you determine a viable product or a viable first sort of prototype. Cost of learning lower, feasible. All right. They got a lot of major clients, right? And really happy to be working with them. Your support's requested. So I am going to put in the chat right now a link to a survey, and this really helps me help you dial in um, dial in this community, right? To provide, this is a passion of mine. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 minutes for you to fill out that uh, survey. Click on that. Take that time. I'm right here if you have any questions. And then I'm going to share with you the top 10 reasons AI projects fail. I will be right back. All right, we're coming down. One more minute. Seems like we got one answer. Really appreciate your support on this. All right. Let's see. We got 3 minutes left, so hopefully please continue. I think we got two surveys. I hope, I really hope you can take the time to fill that survey out. It really helps us. Your information is key. All right. So I'm gonna just jump right into it. One thing I like to say, when I've been talking about a lot of this information is about a stake in the ground, right? You know, I think this slide kind of sums that up. Like in my career of over literally 30 years, right? This is the old school, right? Like you get a date and then you have to hit the date. You know, no company does this. Well, I'd say there's still a lot of companies that are probably doing this. And then I'd say the goal, right, as we've matured is outcomes, right? Delivery to your customers and value, right? And planning by outcome and designing by outcome. And everyone kind of wants to move toward this because this is the way to realize the most value, right? But no company does that, right? And you're trying to find your own sweet spot, right? And you have to understand your culture. Certain cultures are more progressive than others, right? So if you push too hard, you're not going to be successful, right? It's going to be too much information too fast. So, top 10! You've made it. All right, applying application development approaches to data-centric AI, right? We talked about that. ABC, lack of sufficient quantity of data. Kind of talked about that. You may not be capturing it up front in your intake flow. Lack of quality data. That's another thing. Maybe you're not capturing it right. Maybe your data is biased. A lot of reasons why for bad quality data. Misalignment on the solution and the problem. Spoke about that. I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen when they don't even know the problem. Lacking of planning for continued. So that's the post-operation support. Misalignment of the real world data and interaction against training data, right? So you have your training data and it really doesn't match with what you're finding in the real world. Proof of concept thinking, right? To real world pilots, right? It works as a concept, but it doesn't scale to a real world pilot, right? Underestimating the time and cost, right? I think, you have to understand the true time and cost. Had one of our meetups, someone talking about it. You don't always have to use OpenAI. It's like your most expensive option or one of them, right? There are smaller, more boutique models that will provide the same results. Vendor misalignment. There are so many different vendors in this space. Who do you use? The promise versus the reality. And over promising AI capabilities and under delivering, right? It's very easy to over promise. So great technology alone doesn't solve these problems. I think, I'm a big cultural proponent, if you haven't gotten that already. Neither does simply throwing more people. The solution is truly a robust, iterative, scalable method by which to reliably run and scale your projects with a high degree of success. So with that being said, I am ready for any questions or answers that you may question. Oh, questions that you may have, and I will do my best to answer them. Does anyone have any question? You can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat.
Robert, if you don't
Yes.
mind. Thank you very much for the great presentation and for all your efforts. Really appreciate it. From your experience, how long does it take relatively as an average to plan for an AI, let's say, transformation in a company and get things done, you know? So you have approached the several syllabus and steps, but in terms of time talking, how much does it take? This is one. And second, if you don't mind, you have mentioned something about the sweet spot somewhere before the
Yep.
the final stage. I had an experience with transformation project where that stage before reaching the deadline or the end or the outcome, the awaited outcome,
Mhm.
things were not going as per plan, and it showed up drastically in the last year and a half. And here people started running around to see how to fulfill the promise. So I would say the sweet spot would show in the middle. In the middle, I will bring it backwards a little bit. There may be on the once we talk about transformation project and AI revolutionary cultural changes, things may show okay, but then a little bit before the outcome, we may show that, oops, something major is not going. What was the
Yep.
issue? Thank
Yeah,
you.
totally. So let me I'll answer the second one first because that's easy. This sweet spot depends, right? It's kind of the answer for the first one, but I'll answer the second one. That's what I've been sharing. Every company is going to be different, right? So some organizations are more progressive. They're going to be along this continuum more towards sort of outcome driven. Some companies are less, maybe they've been around a couple of 100 years. Like I used to, like big financial institutions, tend to be a little bit more date driven, right? So they might be over here. So where you're at as a company, and what I was trying to stress in particular was you got to listen to where your company is and sort of determine what will be most successful along this continuum. So if you're working, at a big financial bank, right? And you try to be super progressive with outcomes and you're saying, you know what? I can't give you a date. We'll be done when we're done. You may end up getting fired, right? I'm not gonna, so it's important to understand your culture, right? The first one, I hate to say this, but it depends how long, like when you say transformation, right? I'll go back to this slide, right? Oops, this one. Where, how many, like, I'll give you a great story very quickly. When I worked at Intuit, I was an agile coach, right? And I sat down with the head of agile at Intuit. And he did this really masterful survey. And the survey was similar, like how agile are scrumming teams? And Intuit, let me just share with you right now, is the best company I've ever worked at that has done agile. And I was like, oh wow, these guys are great. But when you looked at sort of, teams that are just starting and struggling with agile and then transformational self-directed teams, what I was surprised about, and that is the self-directed were like there were like 3 or 5 teams out of 400 that were self-directed. And that's sort of the same analogy, right, that I'm saying with AI. to get to AI as a part of your DNA, few companies are going to get there. And that's why I also shared the companies that have, I think, a much better chance are startups, right? Because they don't have 100-year culture to undo. So the simple, long-winded answer to you is it depends on what type of organization do you work in? What is the culture? How bought in is C-suite, right? Because what I'll share right now, if you don't have the C-suite bought into this transformation, it ain't happening. It just won't. There's too much that has to be communicated, shared, and empowered. So in I'd be happy offline to talk with you more about like what would that look like. But what I would say is this: you can get a prototype in very quickly, right? That's like 3 months. But if you talk about a transformation, if anyone tells you they can transform your organization in a quarter or even in a year, I would say it's bullshit. I would say a transformation to get to this level is a 2 to 3 year at best for a Fortune 500 type of company, and probably much longer, to be honest. I don't know if that
Thank you.
answers your question. I hope, but I'm more than happy to talk more offline if you like as well.
Thank you, Rob. That was helpful. And I would take away from this, if you are a robust company with long history, try to break yourself down into simpler silos to look like a little bit of a startup and more empowerment, and then you'll be able to move with agility. That's what the takeaway.
Yeah, you want to get big wins early, right? You know, I always break it down in three parts. Early adopters, looky-loos, right? The early adopters are going to jump right on board. Those are the people you want to work with. Get the big wins. The looky-loos go, oh my, look at that over there. I want some of that, right? And that'll happen pretty quick. And then you're going to have that third party is those are the people that are adverse to change. Doesn't matter what you do. They're going to be adverse to change. They have to be told, right? They're not going to change, right? And, you know, if you're in a more progressive company, that breakout of percentages, hopefully the adverse to change is a smaller sort of part of your company. But again, it depends on each company, but that's exactly how I would go about doing it.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, my pleasure. Any other questions? And please fill out the survey. Let's see. I'll see how many people filled out the survey. Any last questions before we go and have a great weekend? We've got a couple of more. Thank you so much. All right. Well, feel free to reach out to me. You know where to get me. I think at the top of this chat, I put in my LinkedIn and contact info. Let me make sure it's all there. Up top, we got my YouTube channel, we got my newsletter, and we have my LinkedIn. So please link in with me. Love to connect with you and have a great, great weekend. Namaste, everybody.
Can you put it up again? I have trouble finding the chat.
Okay. Let me, should I put it in the chat or I can type it out? I'll put it in the chat. Yep.
Put it in the chat. I'll see it.
Let me see here very quick. You want the LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Okay, here it comes. Connect with me. I post newsletters on there, but I would say sign up for my personal newsletter. It always goes out first. We'll be sending one out today. I'm working on it right now. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful Friday, and hope to talk to you soon. Appreciate your time.